You answered my question. You answered my next question because that question was going to be at that moment, at that young age in your life,
Uh-huh.
could you feel the magic of Dr. King?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, I haven't met many people. I've met a few like that since then, but I had never met anybody like that. I'm like 12 or 13. I don't know how old it was, but I had to be about 12 or 13. And it just was commanding. And I was so proud to be a part of him. And I hadn't heard of this civil rights movement because in the South where we were in Virginia, we wanted separate but equal. That integration thing was not something any of us fought for. We wanted separate but equal. Not that we
Yeah,
were happy. This is the way life was. We did the
yeah,
best of what we were able to do with what we had.
yeah,
And as long as the white folks didn't come down there bothering us, we had a good life. Our family, mostly women in our families, worked in their houses. So we knew them. We knew what they ate. We knew how they treated their children. We knew their weaknesses and their strength. They didn't know anything about us. And we liked that
yeah.
because we had our own world.
It's evident that he cares. What do you care about? Welcome to the Rock Newman Show. It's the Rock Newman Show.
Greetings, beloved, and welcome today. We have the immense privilege of sitting down with a true Renaissance man of American media, a man whose career spans the civil rights movement, groundbreaking comedy, iconic sitcoms, and a relentless pursuit of media ownership. He's the suave DJ Venus Flytrap from WKRP in Cincinnati. He's the loving adoptive dad Ray Campbell from Sister Sister. And behind the camera, he's an Emmy nominated director, producer, and co founder of the historic New Millennium Studios. More importantly, he's a dedicated activist who now champions the next generation of storytellers through the Legacy Media Institute and the LGCY TV network. Please join me in giving a massive welcome and say happy birthday. Today is his birthday to the
Yeah.
legendary actor, director, and media pioneer, Tim Reid. Tim,
Yeah.
muchas gracias for joining us here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Danera, I think
All
I'm
right.
supposed to say.
I am. I'm. I'm in a place where muchas gracias is very appropriate.
Yes, yeah, and I should know more Spanish, but dinero, I think, is what I'm saying.
So
But
should I.
whatever it is, it's good to see you, Rock.
Good to see you, brother. Okay, so look, so we worked on this thing. Actually, my wife included,
Hmm.
and she's given me some very clear directions about how I should proceed with this interview. And
Okay.
as per usual, and as my mama used to call me, hard headed, I'm gonna make a deviation. I just have to do it.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna look to do, I want our audience. I promised our audience that when we got through with this interview, they were going to know you better than they've ever known you before. So
Okay.
what
Let's
that
try
means
that.
is what that means is we're gonna go back. We're gonna go way back.
Okay.
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 So, but before we go way back, I got something here from 1995.
Mhm.
You were the director, producer, and screenwriter for Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored.
Yes. Yes.
And out of that, I remember Al Freeman Was it Alfred? Yeah, Al
Yeah,
Freeman
Al Freeman.
saying to a kid, every time we get something, they want to take it away. That's one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And the other thing is Shaft himself, Richard
Yes,
Roundtree, he looks so poignantly and passionately at a young kid and said something to the effect of, I want you to remember you can be anything you want to be.
would be. Yeah.
Both of those things I thought were powerful. I'd just like for you to focus for a minute on that 1995, you being the director, producer, and screenwriter.
Co-screenwriter. I did a rewrite of the original script. Yes.
Uh huh.
Mhm.
Um, Tell us about that experience.
That was one of the most glorious, difficult, inspiring challenges I've ever had in my life. And it took us 9 years to get that book. It's a Pulitzer Prize nominating book um, to the screen. And there were a lot of sacrifices, a lot of challenges, and a lot of battles to get that movie made. They just did not want, at that time, that wasn't the direction the system was going about who we were as people. They had seen Roots. They figured that was enough about that era. Now let's get to what we want them to be, streetwise, hip, talking, trash talking people and comic foils. And when I read an excerpt of that book, it dawned on me that this was my story as well. This was the story of any young black man or woman who was born in the 40s or the early 40s and raised by the last um, most incredible generation that had existed in the modern era, our generation. And when I say our generation, I mean our parents' generation, our grandparents, our great grandparents. These were some incredible people. And because the system did not want to highlight what they were doing, those stories were not being told. So when this book came out, I went, I know these people. This is my uncle Joe. This is
Yeah.
I know them. And so I called the writer of the book and I traced him down. He was in Tulsa, Clifton Talbert, wonderful writer. And I said, this is my story. This is your story. I must do this story. He said, what do you mean? I said, right now I don't have the money to give you what I'm sure Warner Bros. Studios will be able to offer you, but I can tell you, I give you my word that no one will champion your story. No one will dedicate themselves to your story as much as I would. And he had seen the first season of Frank's Place, and he said, well, I saw your show, Frank's Place, and if you bring to it the same kind of energy that you brought to that, I'll give you my story. So for very little money, we signed a deal, and it took me, 8 years to get enough people to get behind me. And the budget that I had for it at that time was like 5 million. They wouldn't even give me. So Bob Johnson and Wayne Heinzinger from Waste Management came
Yeah. You
together.
on the Miami Dolphins, right?
Yeah, yeah. He
Yeah.
came, they came together and said, we'll give you half. Can you do it for half? And I'm going, are you kidding me? I'm covering an era. I'm covering three generations of people here. That's all we're going to give you. So I didn't turn it down. I grabbed it, and I didn't have the money to go out and get the cast that I wanted. So I decided the best way to do it, people like Al Freeman Jr., Richard Roundtree, Isaac Hayes, Taj Mahal. I mean, it just goes on. Phylicia-Rashad. I mean, I just sent them the script. And I said, either pick a part that interests you. I want you in this movie. I want your spirit that I know
Mhm.
exists in this movie. And do you
Mhm.
know they all called me back, including Al Freeman, and says, I'm gonna do this, but I don't want no stuff. I don't want nobody telling us and trying to make us tell the story the way they want. I said, trust me, if you come and join me in this battle, It's going to be hard because I don't have the kind of money I would like to have. They said, we'll be there. I remember Felicia telling me, she said, don't send this to my agent or managers because they're going to give me a hard time. You just tell me how much you have for me and when I'm to be there.
Wow.
And they all showed up. One of my most emotional stories was for me when I think back on it. Taj Mahal. I'd seen Taj Mahal in London, and I went up to him, and I've loved Taj Mahal. His sound is the sound of my childhood, the South where I came from,
Sure.
down in Whaleyville, Virginia. So,
Yeah.
so I went up to him and talked to him in London, and I told him I had something, and whatever. So I called him and told him the same thing and sent him a script. I said, "You're not in the script yet. I haven't written a part for you, but you pick a character, or I will find one." And he said, "All right." So about literally a few days before we were to start the movie, to start shooting in Wilmington, North Carolina, um, he called me and he said, "Tim." I said, "What's Taj?" He says, "My mama died." I said, "Oh, Taj, I'm so sorry, man." He said, "Yeah, I'm on my way to Hawaii to bury my mama." Well, actually, the next day he was supposed to be flying down to Wilmington. So I just assumed, I said, "Taj, I'm so sorry, man. I know you got to go take care of your family business. I appreciate you wanting to be in." He said, "Oh, no, no, no." He says, "I'm going to be there." I said, "Taj, you don't have to." He said, "No, no, no. My mother would have wanted me in this movie."
Come on,
And
man.
literally, man, he
You gonna make
buried
me cry.
her. Oh man, every time, even now, it gets me for clip. He buried her that day and got on a plane that night. He was the first
Come on.
one on set.
Come on. Earlier as you were telling the story, I almost started clapping because it is the quintessential moment of black folks putting their shoulder to the wheel
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
greater good.
yeah.
And obviously, as Quincy Jones said when they did "We Are the World,"
Hmm.
everybody had to check their egos and their
Oh yeah,
greed,
no
not at the
egos.
door, but leave it out at the mailbox somewhere.
They brought the spirit, and I wanted, and individually, I chose them because of their spirit, because I knew they were of the same um, life that I had grown up in, and it was just an amazing experience. One about Al, since you brought Al Freeman up in the beginning, my story about Al that I'll never forget. Al could be difficult. Al was a little angry at the business and the system that he was not treated respectfully as he should have been. He was of Sydney's elk, and they had worked together. But Al never really liked a lot of the stuff that the industry was forcing him to deal with. And
That's part
so,
of what that's part of what made him so perfect to play Elijah Muhammad
oh
in
man,
Malcolm.
yeah. So, and that was, I think, the last role he had played till he got
Mm,
down there. So one day
mm.
we're doing a scene. There's a scene where they're talking about the beginning of the civil rights era, and they were talking about going to Baltimore to the NAACP meeting, and they're all in this church, and not everybody were, as in real life. I wanted to be as pure to the truth as possible. Not everybody was for joining the civil rights movement in the black community. Someone
Right.
just leave things alone. We're doing here.
That's right.
We got our little world because I grew up in segregation in colored towns.
Mm.
So they were saying, let's leave these white folks alone. They're crazy. We don't want to deal with them. And he had a speech. So in the middle of shooting the speech, he stopped and he called me. He said, "Man, we need to talk." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "It ain't work. It ain't running for me. It's not what this is not what I would have said in that era." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "The words sounding modern. They're sounding like something I'd say today. No, I want to speak for the elders." So I said,
Hmm.
"All right." So I said, all right. I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Daphne, would you come over here?" She was working with me. I said, "Would you bring some paper and a pencil?" And she came over. I said, "I want you to jot down whatever he says." So Al said, "Okay." I said, "Al, what would you say?" And he started talking about through the character what he would say, and boom, she took notes, and when he finished, it's about 2 pages or so of his soliloquy, really. And when it was over, I said, "Okay, go to the production trailer and type that up. Bring the pages back. We'll take a 15-minute break or more if we need, and let's Al, we'll bring the pages to you. So she ran off to the production trailer, and he looked at me. He says, "Wait a minute." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Just like that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't you have to call somebody?" I said, "Al, I am somebody."
Yeah, come
And
on.
and he looked at me, man, and literally tears formed in his. He said, "In all my career, I've never had this happen." And we brought back the pages, and he shot the scene, and it's a very powerful scene. So that
And
movie, to me, was the coming together of people I respect, and we all brought respect and honor to our elders throughout that movie. And I'm something I'll be proud of all my life.
it's a treasure, and I invite, urge, and encourage my viewers to take a look. Once upon a time, when we were colored. Um, Now let me behave and get on track, as my wife
That's
said I
all right.
needed to do.
That's all right.
I actually included this part. I want to know who your very earliest and strongest influences were. I heard you say you grew up in a segregated community.
Mm-hmm.
Community.
Color time. Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah.
Who were your strongest, most impactful influences before you were, let's say, 12 years old?
That's an interesting question because you have to look at it as you get older. I'm 81 years today. When you think back, it's actually, you think in terms of context of time. The first of that period, the first person that truly, two people truly shaped my life was, of course, my mother and my grandmother. We had a very difficult, well, all three of us had a very difficult time individually and as a group unit. Um, my grandmother had to come and get me when I was 9 years old. I didn't know who my father was, and had to come and get me when I was nine. My biological father, I did not know, but she had to come and get me because my mother had remarried a gentleman who we found out when I was about 4 or 5 was a heroin addict, and he used to beat my mother. And we had a very difficult time with in doing that period for her. So my mother had a hard life, and she was a very bright, very wonderful woman who creative. I mean, she sewed, make clothes. Also, all of my clothes she would make because we didn't have the money to buy and have. She was just an incredible woman, but very troubled and very much in pain. So watching her and seeing her as a young kid, seeing the things that we have to go to, didn't have 5 days in a row where we would eat favorably every day and all that stuff. And the one thing I learned from her is just that, I don't know what it is. The stick to it is you just don't give up. You take care of the thing that's most important to you. And for her, I was the most important thing. Till finally she realized that she had to give me up for me to survive. So she called my grandmother from my birth father's mother and said, "You got to come and get this boy because I can't. It's not going to work, and I'm afraid of what will happen to him if we don't get him somewhere." So my grandmother came and got me. And at 9 years old, I discovered who my biological father was. And I was also named by my grandmother to be the griot of the family. I was designated by her to be the storyteller.
Okay.
And it was a little brief ceremony, strangely enough. And she owned a rooming house. And so in this rooming house where I stayed with all these roomers on the top floor, there was this incredible vibrant life of people coming and going. And my job was on Saturdays when she cooked a pot of beans and pigtails and pig feet and all that stuff and collard greens. And they would come down, and she was selling whiskey illegally. And we'd be pouring 50-cent shots. And she would say, "Junior, tell them that story about the time we're in church when so and so fell down, or tell that story." And I remember doing that. And so I said that from that time, those were the most important people for me. One who saved my life by giving me up and stayed connected to me, but just couldn't handle me. And then my grandmother who took me in. and taught me the art of storytelling and forced that upon me. So those two people got me through a life that I never would have survived without their input. And then
Right.
after that, that community that I grew up in, some of the most incredible people.
And where was
Uh,
that in Virginia again?
the community was in Norfolk, Virginia, Colortown in Norfolk, Virginia. That's what it was. But my
Okay.
grandmother and my father was from Whaleyville. So in the summers,
Mhm.
to get me out of what was happening in Norfolk, they send me down about 40 miles from Norfolk to Whaleyville, Virginia. I mean, it was the where I hated it. I mean, the outdoor toilet, small shotgun house in
I
the
raised my hand. Yeah.
brother, it was just, I thought, most a god awful place. Ironically, it was also the place that my great great grandfather had been a slave on. So when emancipation happened, not everybody could follow Harriet Tubman up to Canada. A lot of black folks, millions of black folks, stayed where they were in the South and became sharecroppers. And that was the birth of my family. They were sharecroppers. And and contractually, it was to my great grandfather was the last person who was given the rights to the land, about 5 acres, on this large farm, and he was a sharecropper. And when he died, the then owner, generations later, came and pushed us everybody off the land that had been there for 3 generations.
Mm. Sometime later, 6, 7, 8 years after that experience, you served as a bodyguard for Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes,
and
yeah,
and
that.
and ended up being president of the NAACP student chapter at Norfolk State.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to be nice and say I'm so sorry you didn't do that at Howard. but
Oh, they
but
wouldn't.
but
I didn't have the grades for Howard's.
but but,
Norfolk State was the only place would
but you
take me.
turned out okay.
Yeah, yeah.
For younger folks who only know you as an actor,
Hmm.
how did that early hands-on environment in the civil rights movement shape your understanding of your own power and your responsibility as an artist?
Well, how I got to be that whole era has to do with Dr. King. For me, uh, how I got to be his bodyguard for a day again, I'll never forget. I feel like sometimes a Black Forrest Gump. I find myself when I look back now in my life and see myself at these incredible points in history. I'm just there. I'm a fly on the wall and I
Yeah,
interact. Well, I was in some trouble. You're growing up in the South and you're black and it's the kind of, you're in poverty or whatever's going on. If you're not careful, you'll end up with a bunch of folks who are just as frustrated about life as you are, and you get into trouble. Well, I had gotten in some trouble with a youth group that I was part of. You either had to be part of it or then you become a punching bag for the neighborhood. And so I was part of it. We got in some real serious trouble, and they were trying to decide if they were going to send me what they call reform school, kiddie prison, actually, is what it really was. And my grandmother didn't want, of course, jumped in and said, "We can't send that boy to reform school." So she went to what most black people did back in that time. They would go to that point's authority in the community, and it was always the church. It was always the church or a school principal or teacher that lived in the community. So she took me to the church, Reverend Wilson at New Calvary Baptist Church on Virginia Beach Boulevard. And he was sitting in a room looking at me, and I'm sitting there with my grandmother, and you could see he was disturbed. He said, "So you one of them juvenile delinquents?" And I said, "No, sir. No, no, I'm not." He said, "No, you one of them tough kids." I said, "No, sir. Actually, I'm not. I'm scared every time I'm out there and all that." He said, "Yeah, I need a tough kid right now." And I looked at him going, "Well, that's odd for a preacher to say." And he said, "I got a gentleman coming here." This was in the 50s, the late 50s. He said, "I got a gentleman coming going to speak at this church, and I think he needs a bodyguard. So I want you and another kid who was doing well in school, came from a great family." He said, "I want the two of you to be his bodyguard." 2 Sundays away or something like that. And if you do that, I'll see if I can help you. And lo and behold, um, I got there that morning, that Sunday morning early, and it was Dr. King. This was before Selma, by the way. Not Selma, yeah, before Selma,
Yeah.
before Montgomery. I'm sorry,
Right.
before the bus boycott, and this was this man, and we were introduced, and our job was to stay with him all day when he goes to interviews, when he's going to preach, then after when in church you got to go eat after that. So we were with him from the morning until about 5 or 6 that evening when they drove away. And I'd never met anybody with such gravitas. I mean, the way he spoke, the way he carried himself, the way he commanded the room, I'd never seen it ever in my life. Because we didn't have television that much.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was nowhere nobody to see
yeah,
that other than your
yeah,
preacher or a lawyer or the police.
yeah.
You didn't. And I was just taken by him. And we
You
talked, and then
answered my question. You answered my next question because that question was going to be at that moment, at that young age in your life,
uh-huh.
could you feel the magic of Dr. King?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, I haven't met many people. I've met a few like that since then, but I had never met anybody like that. I'm like 12 or 13. I don't know how old it was, but it had to be about 12 or 13. And it just was commanding. And I was so proud to be a part of him. And I hadn't heard of this civil rights movement because in the South where we were in Virginia, we wanted separate but equal. That integration thing was not something any of us fought for. We wanted separate but equal. Not that we
Yeah,
were happy. This is the way life was. We did the
yeah,
best of what we were able to do with what we had.
yeah,
And as long as the white folks didn't come down there bothering us, we had a good life. Our
mhm,
family, mostly women in our families, worked in their houses. So we knew them. We knew what they ate. We knew how they treated their children. We knew their weaknesses and their strength. They didn't know anything about us. And we liked that
yeah,
because we had our own world.
yeah,
Well, when the civil rights movement really kicked in, I going through life, I found myself deciding what to do with my life, and I decided I had enough money. I'd gotten a job to go to college, and I started at Norfolk State. Um, I hadn't gone to college yet, but it's 1963, August 28th. A bunch of buddies of mine said. We had joined this group called SCAD, Student Committee Against Discrimination. It was an offshoot of SNCC, and we were
mhm,
very militant. Our whole
mhm,
thing was separate but equal, and we don't want no mess. Leave us alone, stay out of our way. We'll stay in this community and build what we need with what we have.
mhm,
So very militant, and we were willing to fight. We certainly wouldn't have won the war, but we were willing to fight.
yeah,
And I go up, and it's a march on Washington. And I get there, and that day changed my life again. And the man who changed it was Dr. King. I was in a tree about 50 feet from when he did the speech. And that speech hit me like a ton of bricks. And I went back, enrolled in college, and became president of the student chapter or college chapter of the NAACP and began our battles that stayed with us until the passage of the Civil Rights Act. And that's how, again, Dr. King. So he was a symbol, and there were many other people, by the way. That's the one thing we forget is that we hear Dr. King, and he earned every word that we say about him positively. But there were others. There was A. Philip Randolph. There was
yeah,
Roy Wilkinson. There was
yes,
Abner. I mean, there were so many. Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, there were just so many. And in my community, there were one or two that would come and get us out of jail when we got arrested or whatever. It was a group community effort, and I think movies um, have done us such a disservice, and they still do. Even movies we make do a disservice, and the disservice is we've been colonialized to the point decolonization has to come to us somehow. We have to awaken. And this doesn't mean angry, it means context. We got to go back and put our lives and the lives of our elders in context. Because you see, that's the thing they don't, AI is never going to do. It's artificial. So whatever it tells you, it's going to
Yeah.
be a lie. It's artificial. It tells you that up front. It
Yeah.
doesn't say truth intelligence, it
Yeah.
says artificial. And so our history will always, when told by the system, will always be absent of context.
Yeah.
And so my job has been, for the last, I don't know how many years, um, I've been driven to try to bring context to our culture, to our history, to our story.
I don't want to leave this camera without sharing with all of my friends, family, and everyone out in the Rock Newman Show 2.0 universe the matter of Juanita's remedy. It is a lotion, it is a body emollient, it is something so wonderful. My wife is a happy woman these days, and she shared it with their friends, and they're beyond happy. You gotta get Juanita's remedy. Get it, and you will thank me. Tim, if I can jump in there
Mhm.
and stay on track so I don't get slapped. I'm gonna do over there in the corner. Um, you in allowing people to know you better than they've ever known you before.
Mhm.
I'm gonna talk about uh, the forming the comedy duo
Yeah,
Tim and Tom in 1968.
yeah,
Making
yeah.
you guys one of the first successful interracial comedy teams in the U.S. What was it like being on stage in that era? And what kind of pushback or conversely, encouragement did you receive for simply standing together?
Yeah, that was again, you don't see it coming. These things happen. Forrest Gumpish life. I found myself involved with a gentleman named Tom Dreesen, mixed Italian gentleman who I had joined the JC's Junior Chamber of Commerce because I had arrived in Chicago. I happened to have been fortunate, thanks to the work of Dr. King and all the other civil rights leaders, to be the first black hired by DuPont, EI DuPont. At that time, the ninth largest corporation in the world, started recruiting, and I was picked from a historically black college, and I was the first hired by them in management. They had black people working in the plant, but not in management. So they
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what to do with me. And where we're going to send this guy, they had 11 divisions across America. And they chose to send me to Chicago. They thought that would be the safest place for a young black man representing this ninth largest corporation in the world in marketing and sales. So they sent me to Chicago, and in doing so, they wanted to say, "You got to join, the clubs. You got to work in the community," because that was part of their theme. So I joined the JCs, and the day I joined, a gentleman, Tom Dreesen, said, "We're having some problems with drugs in our community," and this was in a predominantly white community that the meetings were being held. Glue sniffing, and I think they had just had America had just been awakened with the death of Art Linkletter's daughter, who jumped out of a window to her death because of drugs, and the world was awakened. They always thought all drugs come from the black community, so they
Right.
didn't. But that really awakened them. So the community began to do things, and they proposed a drug program. Well, my stepfather was a heroin addict, so I knew a little bit about the ills of drug abuse for sure. So I joined with Tom, and we started going to schools, talking and using a little lightness, not just this heavy and our street background. He was a tough kid in Harvey, white kid. And one day we were doing our show, and a young lady who we know to this day said, "You guys are funny. You ought to be a comedy team." So about two drinks at a bar later, a week or so later, he said, "You want to do it?" And I thought, "Yeah." And that's
Mm-hmm.
how we started in showbiz. And how were we received? It was tough. We were attacked and on the stage, off the stage. I was poisoned, uh, fist fights, chasing. It it was 6 years of hell and euphoria. You
Wow.
know,
Wow.
whenever, because business, as you know, again, context, show business was changing at that time. The old guard was going out, the new guard was coming in. Richard Pryor was beginning to rise, Dick Gregory. And so we found ourselves in between. We were the last to really play on the Playboy circuit, those clubs all across America.
Hmm.
And I just wrote something recently about the Dells. The Dells, who were from the same community that we started, gave us an opportunity to open for them across the country and trap. So we were just thrust into show business. I quit my job, but it was difficult. I mean, it was, and then when we got to we figured if we got to California, that we'd have our own show. This is about 4 or 5 years into the show business career. Well, we got there and we found out that race relations wasn't working for Hollywood. Hollywood made their money and their stories off of the racism and what happens to people. The story as it is today is always the worst of us, the worst of them. Mississippi burning, which still angers me that they had to get Gene Hackman. They couldn't tell our story. They had to tell the story of Gene Hackman in
Yeah.
Mississippi. But all those kinds of things that were going on, they just didn't want us in. I mean, literally, the agencies, the William Moore, all they just did. What are you guys? We tried to get
Tim,
on
I
the
was going,
Tonight Show.
man, I was going to ask you at that juncture of your life.
Mhm.
This was you finished you finished Norfolk when 68,
68, January, that was a
68,
midterm.
and
Yeah.
by 74, 6 years later, you're still a very young man.
Uh-huh.
You took off for California and for Hollywood.
Yeah. Quit my job.
Man, I know a lot of folks had to think this boy done lost his mind.
Not only that, I was married, my first wife, and two kids. They thought they actually were thinking about having me examined. That ain't an easy thing for black people. We don't run to the psychiatrist. They really thought we need to put this man, have him examined. But I refused to go to the doctor. But yeah, I quit show business. I mean, I quit my job. It was 5 years before I made anywhere near the money in show business that I made at working for DuPont. It's I don't have to tell you, Rock. As we saw bumped in each other the years during the boxing era, me hanging with Butch Lewis and all those.
And the
You got
crew.
it in the crew, yeah,
Yeah.
in the crew, Denzel, all of us. Um, you have to be a bit crazy. I think the thing that saved you, saved me, and saves anybody who chooses to go into show business who put it all out there. And it doesn't always work. And accept the down and keep fighting through to the good. You have to be a bit mad. And if you are a bit mad, which we all are to do what we do, I mean, for you actually were able to convince a human being that he could be the world champion in boxing, that he could beat Holyfield, he could beat anybody. You did that. There ain't no book. You can't get on Chat TV or whatever. I mean, Chat thing and write in. I want to be a fight promoter. What should I say? What
Right.
should I do?
Right.
I want to be an
Right.
actor. What should I do?
Yeah.
There was no artificial intelligence to give you the schematic for life as it is now. So you had to be creative. I had to be creative, and Sammy had to be creative, and Richard Pryor. I'll tell you a brief Richard Pryor show story that, again, I feel like Forrest Gump. Uh, I get to Chicago in 68 from the South. I was living in the projects before I moved. Now I got my own house, a in a cul-de-sac, quarter acre land. And I'm sitting there shocked. My middle class life came so quickly. Back in the day, we used to say in school, you remember the context of this, one day I'll be making
That's
$10,000 a
right.
year. Boy,
That's right.
when
That's
you
right.
say that as
Mm,
they say where I come from, that would be high cotton.
that's right.
And so there I was, out of college. literally making close to $10,000 a year with my own first house that I had ever
Mm.
owned, two cars, and it happened too fast. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I even started smoking a pipe. I mean, I was just going through the system what I had seen on television.
Yeah.
So one night, I mean, New Year's Eve, 68, I look in the paper and says Richard Pryor is playing at Mr. Kelly's in downtown Chicago on
Mm.
Rush Street. Well, Mr. Kelly's was probably one of the finest clubs in the history of show business anywhere in the world.
Mm.
And so I went, oh, I want to see that. 9 degrees below zero.
My
This is the
Lord.
New Year's Eve. We jump in
Mm.
the car. We head down to Chicago. Ain't got no reservations, no nothing. And we get there. There's a line around the block. It's 9 degrees below zero. I go, I'm not standing out here. Well, somehow the hustle in us, that madness, I find myself standing in the entrance of this club, and the guy looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "What?" He said, "You know how long those people tried to get reservations? Some of them made them a year ago. You think you can just walk in here and get a seat?" I don't know. I said, he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Virginia." He said, "Oh, one of them Southern boys. Let me give you a little lesson." I had never been in a nightclub. Well, as luck would have it, we managed to stay there and get in the way till finally, just when it was about time for Richard Pryor to go on stage, two people left. They were fighting, man and wife, and they left the club in anger. And he looked at me and my wife and said, "Go sit at that bar." And out came Richard Pryor. And I've always loved I had seen him on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I just was I was mesmerized. He was, as always, but he was just and unbelievable. So when the show was over, I looked at my wife then and I said, "I want to do that. And I want to do it
Mm.
on that stage New Year's Eve." She said, "Yeah, sure. That's after you be an astronaut. Now let's go home." So we go
Mm.
home.
Right.
Well,
Right.
let me tell you, New Year's Eve, 1974 was the last opening of that club. They closed the following few months. I was the last comic to work on that stage of
You
opening for Della Reese.
you was manifesting before the word before people even knew
Man,
the word.
all I can tell
Manifest.
you is dreams come true, brother. That's all I can
Yes,
tell
yes,
you.
yes. And
They do.
so you go to California, go to Hollywood. You're
Yeah.
making this money and having this comfortable life with working at DuPont. You go
Hmm.
out there and you go out at a time
Hmm.
when HIV was proliferating in in Hollywood and everywhere else.
Hmm.
Did that scare you?
Well, actually, in 75 is when myself and a gentleman that I met who had just come out a week ahead of me, John Witherspoon, Spoon and I hooked up. It was not yet at its heat. It wasn't, I mean, it really hadn't hit yet. Now, the sexual revolution, of course, was at full steam,
Yeah,
and drug use and Valium and cocaine and all of that was happening, which of course led to the explosion of AIDS,
yeah,
which was about, I would think, when it really began to take notice was when crack and all that happened, about 76, when it became the
right.
international
Hmm.
fear. But the fear that we had at that time was eating
Yeah.
and being able to pay our rent.
What did you do? How did you eat? How did you put clothes on your back?
It was it was to say difficult is putting it mildly, but we hustle, man. Black folks, especially this new group of black folks, have forgotten how to hustle. And I don't
Mm.
mean stealing or
Yeah, yeah.
robbing. I
You
mean
talking about making a way out of no way?
making a way out of nowhere. That's who we are.
Yeah,
That's why we're still here.
yeah,
We have withstood everything anybody humanly could put at us or block us with, and we still here. We rise. Well, that hustle gets in you if you come from an area where you've known hustlers. So we hustle. I mean, Spoon, we did little jobs. Every now and then something would happen. I did a pilot, and so you don't what I guess what the difference is, hustlers in between the downtime don't panic.
Yeah.
They become resolved. They become
Mm-hmm.
more determined.
Mm-hmm.
So there are times when Spoon and I, we'd hustle up and do a gig, have $50 or something, and we would get together and we'd go buy a chicken, a barbecue chicken, and we'd live off that for like, he had a little place. Matter of fact, the place he had, I had divorced from my first wife, and I got up with the furniture and all that stuff, and he didn't have any furniture, so I gave him, because I was a boy toy at that time. I was living with someone, and being not taken care of. Well, yeah, being looked out for. I put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I gave him my friend. So we always hustled. We were hustling, and every now and then a gig would happen. The first gig, and in between, you do these little TV shows. You get lucky. And we did that until 77 for me when I did the pilot for WKRP in Cincinnati. And it was picked up, and my life changed.
I was about. That's my next point.
Hmm.
You famously fought against stereotypical portrayal of your character,
Yeah, yeah,
Venus Flytrap,
yeah,
and you won the right to write for the show.
yeah.
What specific narrative or scene were you most determined to change, and what lesson did that teach you about advocating for authenticity on the set?
Well, KRP, when you look at the show, again, in context of what was going on in the world and in show business at that time, was one of the first shows to go against the trend of buffoonery, or telling stories and laughing at people as opposed to being a part of the story. And so our stories we were the first television show to ever use music. Everybody says Miami Vice. It was us. Howard Hessman and I chose our music, and we chose our music. So when the music that you hear had to do how we felt about the scene. So you got to, again, context. FM was just beginning to break in America. It was all AM prior to that.
Yeah.
FM was coming in. We decided, Howard and I, that we would be it wasn't written in the script. We would program the show like an FM station, although we
Hmm.
didn't say it. It just says
Hmm.
WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Um, and in doing so, uh, we had music and we used it to themes of the show. For instance, back in 1980, 81, I was on my way to South Africa, and I got a call from Rita Marley. And she said, Tim, this is Rita Marley. And I thought it was a joke. And said, no, it's Rita Marley. I said, okay. She said, Bob wants to talk to you because he has said and identifies that you were the first person to break him in having his music played in radio. I said, "What do you mean?" Well, you got to remember, AM was not playing his music because it was too
Yeah.
political.
Yeah.
So FM stations following WKRP in Cincinnati, as it was growing and more stations becoming, because of the television show, because of the change in music taste, were becoming FM, and they start playing Bob Marley and these stations in their format because that's what we were doing on television. So what I learned from that show was the power of television, the power of imaging, and I want to write. I got to start saying things that I feel strongly about. And so I wrote an episode called Family Affair, where for the first time the people at the station began to face their own racism, myself and all the members. And it was a very powerful show. I almost walked off the show because when the network saw the script that I had written, they said, oh no, we're not going to have this. We don't want this. The show is doing well. Tell him just to be funny. Tell him just to wear those funny clothes. And I
Yeah.
was like, nah. So
No.
I told them we argued back and forth for the first. It's a week of rehearsal and taping of the show. So up to our taping, which was on a Friday, about Wednesday, it was a big people from New York. The board of directors was saying this script can't be done. We're not going to have him. Well, the reason they were upset something had happened racially in America at that time. I can't even remember the incident, but it had really pissed me off. And I remembered something had happened where black people had to be subservient in a way they could not. They were so frustrated that they could not show their anger and their thing at this racial incident that happens. It's happening now. So it reminded me of In Heat of the Night with Sidney, which 10 years earlier, he had smacked this man,
The,
white man, and
the
it
la-
just, ooh, I don't have to tell you,
yes,
America went crazy.
yes.
And I was so proud. I couldn't wait to meet Sidney years before that, just to say how proud he made me that he stood by it. It didn't show in all the states, especially mostly in the South. It certainly
Uh-huh.
wasn't seen in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. However, it was a slap that went around the world.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about this. So at the end of the script that I'm writing now in 78, I I had the opportunity and I used it. I wanted to punch the white guy who had said something racially to me. So it ended with me in my script. It ended with me punching this guy and
Yeah.
knocking him out.
Mm-hmm.
Network was like, we're not
Yeah.
going there. You're not going to
Mhm.
have it. So I said, well, I wrote it. I take the script back. You can't take this script back. We bought it. We own it. I said, well, I tell you what I can do. I can leave the show. Either it's going to go down the way I've written it. You're not going to keep doing this to us. You're not going to keep contextually changing our story. In other words, a black man having the street right when a man says something to him and tries to belittle
Dis-
him.
yeah.
Uh-uh.
Disrespect. Mhm.
I'm gonna this guy in my neighborhood, this guy would have no teeth.
Yeah.
Well, it ain't gonna happen. So I said, all right, I'll leave the show. So they were preparing for me to leave the show, and the writer producer, my dear friend Hugh Wilson, said, "Tim," he used to call me Timmy. Only white man I let call me Timmy. Timmy, he said, "We need to talk about compromise." I said, "All right, Hugh, I'm telling you." He said, "You really?" I said, "I'm really ready to walk off the show." It was on a Thursday, ready to do camera blocking. He said, "Let me think about this." So we sat down and we talked. He said, "Compromise." He said, "If we can figure out this system we have to be smarter than the system. We have to be more creative. We're creatives. We've got to come up with a way to get what we want, but understand the danger of if we want to continue to do this." He said, "So let's think of a way out of this." So he came up with a solution. I agreed to it. I said, "I'll make that compromise." So we shot the show. I didn't leave. And the show ended. That scene ended with myself and Gary Sandy punching the guy at the same time. And that's how it ended. And it
Wow.
taught me a lesson about how to get your creative story told from a black point of view, context. And I use it now more than ever. So that stayed with me in Frank's Place with anything I do when we were colored. You gotta do what our ancestors did. They were smarter than the system. You know that. The music,
You're
the
you're you're giving voice to folks in a very kind of dispassionate, eloquent, calm way to the racism, the rampant, ingrained racism in Hollywood,
Mhm.
really, and everywhere else
Yeah.
that comes under the umbrella of white supremacy. Because some people
Mhm.
want to believe, oh, color ain't got nothing to do with that script. Color ain't got nothing to do with that movie. And I
Yeah.
hope those that are watching here today understand what it is that you're just saying, because you just pulled the scab off, all the way off, in a non-yelling, screaming kind of way, but in an effective way. You gotta fight to tell the narrative. Tim, I'll take personal liberty to say that when I decided in 2012, I had done an interview with a guy at WHU our radio in Washington, D.C., Howard University Radio.
Hmm.
We were in a little studio, and we were back there for a couple of hours, and he taped the interview. I remember walking out of that studio and saying to myself, I feel my responsibility at this point in my life, having been blessed, educated, knocked down, and got up, but to have the ability to have a voice, to change, to do my little part to change the narrative.
Yeah.
And man, the way that you have fought to do that in your own way, I just want to say, hats off to you for that. And as another point of somewhat personal privilege, we were just talking about Venus Flytrap and WKRP in Cincinnati. So when I posted on Facebook to say that Tim Reid was going to be my next guest,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys are going to get to know him better than you ever have before, the first two texts that I got, it was from our godsons. They are identical twins.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what they wrote to me.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Reid was the quintessential father figure in Sister Sister. We were 6 years old when Sister Sister premiered at a time when we thought the actors on television were real people. Our parents had recently divorced, so watching Ray was a ray of hope for my early childhood. Empathetic, aware, and powerfully positive nature are memories that I have watching such a remarkable show with my identical twin, Colin. Currently, certainly as a young black kid, we would one day grow up to be black men. Tim was one of the major influences on us deciding to pursue acting and theater studies in college. He was in a class with the all-time best, Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince, Damon Wayans from My Wife and Kids, and John Marshall Smart Guy, where being a proud and capable father played remarkably well. As my twin and I launched our creative studio production company, Blue Pharaoh Studios. Now they're both Duke University graduates, so that's probably why they named Blue Pharaoh. Knowing that Mr. Reid launched a nonprofit towards empowering the next generation for creators of color is exactly the mission we are undertaking.
Wonderful.
So there are a number of people who have reached out talking about the impact that you had on them. And this note right here that they sent me, I thought was beautifully representative. And I wanted to share that to you.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Give them my thanks for writing that. I, I've been so blessed. God, the gratitude that I wake up with every morning and have been for years is that even the difficulty, matter of fact, I probably learned more from the difficulty than I have from the joys and the pleasure. The ego gets in the way when you're enjoying yourself. But I learned a lesson, and I always study what I'm doing. Thank God the internet wasn't and artificial intelligence wasn't as popular as it is now, because I would have relied on them and artificial information that comes from a myriad of people as opposed to my own instincts, my own ancestral intelligence is where I'm going back to and trying to get more people to revive ancestral intelligence. It's in our DNA. It has been there since the first civilization that we created in south of Africa when we started walking upright. But you have to tune into it. Here's something that I learned by doing my work, by doing the work that you do. Just don't become a fight promoter. You don't just become a boxer. You have to work at it. You can't Zoom it. You can't write it down and ask somebody to give you the whole script. It don't work that way. When I did Frank's Place, I had the pleasure of being one of the first black actors or performers on CBS to be invited to the office of William Paley Now, why is that important? Well, William Paley is truly the father of television. um, Real quickly, back in the 40s, when after the war, I think maybe 45, 46, he, the head of RCA Radio, and another gentleman, maybe three or four, were asked by the Army to come and sit and watch this thing, this propaganda machine that they had built for World War II propaganda and was used expertly by us and Hitler. And that it was built to give propaganda, to give the story that they wanted the people to pay attention to. And they said, "Can you amortize this? Can we make any money with this?" Remember, radio and vaudeville and Broadway was the thing,
Yeah.
and even movies weren't as doing as well as radio and all that. And he, of all the people that came, decided that he could use it, and he created evening news. He created dramatic theater, Playhouse 90. He hired Walter Cronkite. He
Uh,
shaped television into a storytelling factory. And so I get a chance to go. I'm asked to go. He's requested that I come up on the 60th floor, one elevator going to the 60 while he was still alive. And we go in there, and I'll just cut right to the chase. His art. I mean, I was fascinated by being invited, and even the president of the network went with us. They had to debrief me for 45 minutes, like I was going to see the Pope. Uh, and so I'm sitting in front of him, and he's sitting there with the sun blowing behind him, like a scene from Network, where you just sitting there, the voice of power. And he looked at me. He said, "Young man, I've seen your show, Frank's Place." He said, "I like it." He said, "I would have been proud to have it on the network when I ran it." Now, for the creator of television to tell you you've made
yeah.
something that he would
That's some
sanction,
more hot cotton.
that's real high cotton there.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and then he asked me something I'll never forget. It'll play in my, as they say, when you die, the few seconds of your life goes for you. This will be in that reel. He said, "I have but one question to ask you." I said, "What is that, sir?" He said, "What is your propaganda?" When he said that, bells went off like it was Notre Dame. I went, that's what we're in the business of.
Mhm.
That's what this is all about. And that's what now everybody knows it's all about.
Yeah.
You know, it's propaganda, good or bad, it's propaganda. And I thought from here on out, I have to control my propaganda. What do I need to do that? I need a studio. I decided to build a studio. I need to start making and telling the stories and putting context of our lifestyle, our culture. That's where that bell first came, and I've never stopped. I mean, it's been a battle. I don't make as much money as I could by doing it the way they want to do it or following trends. I'm working now in Africa. Just recently set up a little business in Kenya, Nairobi. There is a big need. There's a change coming again by us, by the way, on the continent of Africa. If we don't have more control of shaping our images, if we all surrender to AI, we're going to be set back. And I think eventually we'll destroy ourselves. But if we're smart enough, if we hustle enough and get through to some of the young minds, the Z generation, the alphas, and the coming betas, and say, okay, here are the truth, here are the facts. This is you need to hustle. This is trench time now. As Butch Lewis would always say to me, "Where you at, Tim? You in them trenches?" I said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
Butch, I'm in the trenches."
Mm.
We got to get in the trenches, man. And it can't be about forget what the system is doing, forget what the man tells you you should be doing. You got to be a little crazy. You got to be bold. You got to understand the power you have. We do it better than anyone. We have the most style. We have the most courage. We thrive better than any civilization. If not, we wouldn't be here because it's all of it has been to get rid of us. And so I want to see us to take charge. This is not about fighting and getting rid of white, black, and all that. It's about culture. It's about honoring your ancestors, wherever they are, Spanish, black, it doesn't matter. You got to honor them. And I hope more writers. That's why I started my institute. been doing it now for 15 years. Some of them are doing extremely well. And it's to we gotta give them that sense of how to use this propaganda, like what you do. I mean, one of the reasons I'm here is because I've watched your show over the years, and I've got keep saying I want to be on the show with Rock. The questions he asked, and the images that he's putting before us. It was you. You know, you followed Tony Brown. Tony Brown's journal, man. I mean, I've been looking at some of those old shows and realizing in context when he was talking, he was doing that way back in the
Yes.
70s, way back. He was taking
Yes.
issues that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So I salute you and what you're doing. And we just got to get these young people to wake up. I mean, use the technology. I'm not fighting against technology, but you can't listen to it. You can't let it rule you.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
can't.
Tim, I know it's your birthday, but I swear I want to try to keep you a little bit longer.
Okay, all
Um,
right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay.
For you, Rock, we got it.
I'm jumping. I'm jumping ahead. I'm cutting out some stuff.
Hmm.
So here's what I want to know: if you had unlimited resources and time,
Hmm.
what is the one historical figure, event, or narrative from the African diaspora that you feel is critically undervalued and that you would immediately turn into a feature film or series?
Mm.
Anything come to mind about that?
Well, yeah, I think now it changes every 5 years or so. But right now, I would do from our perspective, the Moors. The Moors of Africa are the longest um, colonizers in the history of the world. Everybody thinks the Europeans are. No, we colonized the Europeans for over 700 years. And what they brought to the world, you got to remember, again, context. The Moors, when the Moors were at their zenith of power, Europe was in the dark ages. 95% of the people were illiterate. They didn't even have one language. It was just gibberish and different levels of gibberish. They didn't even bathe. They white powder or whatever. They didn't bathe. If they were in France or in those areas, they put on perfume to hide the odor. The Moors taught them to bathe. It gave
Yeah.
them created soap, toilets. I mean, they were pissing out of windows. These people were uncivilized. The more 700 years, science, math, art. The only reason we have Mona Lisa now is because the Moors created a way to create archival paint. No one had that, not the Greeks, not the Romans, no one. So
Mm.
when you look at what they brought to the world and angered the Catholic Church and all these people, Queen Isabella and all of them, who finally put together enough money and war machine to conquer them, and they surrendered Alhambra. By the way, they surrendered Alhambra, and the end of the Renaissance, the real Renaissance, was in 1492. Everybody thinks about Christopher Columbus. No,
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus was a boy joy. He was out somewhere. They got rid of him so they could do what they wanted to do. But
Yeah.
the Moors surrendered Alhambra in 1492, and the end of their reign and colonizations ended. Now they were not they did some horrible things and slave all that stuff. But I would love to do a documentary miniseries, sort of like Roots or something, for 8, 9 episodes or 10 episodes, and show the context of how they changed the world, good and bad, but how they changed the world. And I
That
think
is
that would make people
fascinating.
think. Yeah, that's
That's
what I would do.
fascinating. And you use the word in context a few times. That's fascinating for me because I've been in touch with a brother in Tennessee,
Hmm.
and we haven't been able to reconcile our schedules yet. But he is one of the foremost authorities on the Moors.
Oh
He's
man, it's a story.
he, he's a professor. It's absolutely beyond fascinating,
Yeah,
and we're going to hook up. I will certainly
yeah,
alert you to make sure that
yeah. I
when he's
love
coming
that. I think
out.
now you can raise the money. I mean, especially in Nairobi, I've met a few people from Dubai and other who are looking. You just got to make sure, again, contextually and truth wise, that you don't placate. It's not a religious story.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
story. And if
Yeah.
you can do that, if you can get people, but $1 million an episode, you do it. You can do
Yeah.
that. 8 million, 10 million. That's
Yeah.
no money for people.
Yeah. So I cut a bunch of stuff out in just trying to honor your time on your birthday, but I have what I'm going to literally start today
Hmm.
is what's called a rock it round,
Okay.
where I'm going to ask you a quick reflection
Hmm.
on each of these people. The first one you've already talked about, but in this rocket round, I want to keep him in this rocket round. That's Martin Luther King.
Oh gosh. Teacher, prophet, you know, um, that's the way I see him. He was a prophet, and he had his vulnerabilities, but he taught me, and I'm looking at it from a personal level. But he was a prophet, and he taught me.
Phylicia-Rashad.
Phylicia-Rashad is one of the people I'm most in love with on this planet because she has such peace. Um, she has a sense of spiritual peace that seems to uh, attach itself to my the back in the day people that I knew, women who were strong, who were so embedded in their own worth, they knew, and power. They didn't have to shout, they could just be.
Yeah,
And to me,
man,
she
and
is peace.
I encourage everyone to try to look for her voice and her sister Debbie's voice, talking
Hmm.
about what spirit their mother infused
Oh,
them with.
yes.
That's so extraordinarily powerful. Muhammad Ali.
Defiant power, um, and one of the best sense of humors of anyone I've ever spent any time with. He had that thing in his eye, that little gleam, that little you- he loved the tease. And he had a great sense of humor, but he was defiant, and he understood his power. He
Yeah,
never doubted his power.
his. I'll share this with you, Tim. Although I'm interviewing you, I'll share this with you.
Hmm.
He more more singularly than any other human being on the planet was and has been and remains my greatest influence.
Yeah, I can
Muhammad,
understand.
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, yeah.
Denzel.
Denzel is uh, a just a man who he's like a chameleon, actually. I've because part of the crew, and over the years, we have spent time together as a group, at fights and things. Whatever character he has just played or he's playing, he takes on that. That's why I call him like a chameleon. He takes on that. When he was doing training day, you had to be careful when you were sitting by him and talking to him. He had an edge to him. He takes
Man,
on. He just becomes. That's why I say he's a chameleon. He's a consummate actor, no question. But he can take on a character in a way that I never even dreamed to have that kind of skill. But he becomes Hurricane, Carter.
yeah,
He
yeah.
becomes these
No.
guys, but he doesn't let it go right away. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it affects him. And
Hmm.
I've been around him when he was doing certain characters that you not that you had to be careful, but you could see that, and
Yeah.
you deal with him in a different way.
I can only imagine here. You just mentioned training day. I'm not a TV
Hmm.
watcher that much. I'm not a movie person that much to the chagrin of the
Hmm.
woman that I've spent the last 44 years with. But he, he is the first one that I felt the energy that he portrayed in Training Day, that it leapt off of the screen. I
Yeah,
mean, it came out in a way that I don't think I've seen
yeah,
anybody do the same thing.
yeah.
Um, your wife, Daphne Reed.
Hmm. Uh, we sometimes the universe gives you not necessarily what you want, but what you need. And we've been together now. Well, we got married in '82, but we've been together now so long, 40 some years. Um, and we have fought, we have stayed together, we have the she is the challenging aspect of my life that I needed, but I didn't want, but I can't imagine myself without it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's really because I'm a country mouse. She's a city mouse. She's
mhm,
highly intelligent. She's one of these menses. You know, she's I don't know what her
uh-huh,
IQ is. I couldn't think
yeah.
that high, but she she and I offer a really interesting view of things, and it's been part of uh, who I am in these last years in particular. But I'm so glad she has been in my life for all these years. But I would be a different person had I not been with her all these years.
Because this is timely here. Um, Rob Reiner.
Yeah, Rob was. I had the pleasure of meeting him a few times. Never worked with him, but he is the dichotomy of Hollywood in terms of he had the best of worlds. He had his father was a genius, comedy genius. He became one. His training, everything about him, and then in his personal life, he has this particular thing that the universe. I don't think it does it to you, but it seems like he had the best. He's a Charles Dickens character, the best of times, the worst of times, and that's what life will do to you sometimes. And it's I won't say it's the luck of the draw, but um I don't see him as a tragic character. I see him as someone who life uh, dealt him the joy and the tragedy of life. He's like that mask, in the world that we portray, the images that we put out there. There's this wonderful image, but nobody knows what's going
Mm.
on the other side. And he, I think, will bring to mind that to people about life, that we got to stay on our game, because who knows what the other person is going through. And you learn from these kinds of things. I am blessed to just before I came on, my son called me. He's visiting his mother. Uh, and he called me, and my son will be, well, this year he'll be 60. He's 59 years old, just in October. And our relationship has been one of wonder and one of some difficulty in terms of divorce and how his life was. And he had to take on the role, not had to, he chose to take on the role of being the man of the house and all of those things that has made him. But when I look at my son, I always say this to them. I don't think he believes me, but I know it's true. My son is the man I had hoped to be.
Hmm.
And we're very different, but he is the man I had hoped to be. I didn't have the character that he has to deal with things the way that I look back and I go, it was my finest hour. It should have been my finest hour, but it was. And so I've learned from my son. And again, I thank the universe for him being who he is. And he frustrates me sometimes with that. He won't take the path I would take. But I also look back and I feel so blessed. And you think of somebody like Rob Reiner, he would want his son to be in his footsteps. He would want his son to be the man of character that he want. And sometimes the hand just doesn't, the cards don't come out that way. And
Man, that is the answer about Rob Reiner is a perfect segue into the next reflection I'd like for you to share. Person,
mm,
Richard Pryor.
oh man, Richard Pryor, to say you love him is, he taught me something. Working with him, of course, was an education. It was like working with Michelangelo and learning how to sculpt. It was working with Richard Pryor was myself and Robin Williams and all of us and Spoon and Marshall Ward, all these people who work with him adored him, and he adored us because we made him laugh. He could play off us, and he loved the improv. So we had a wonderful relationship when we were doing his show, and even prior to that. But Richard taught me something that I have used so many times. He was very dissatisfied with me in the way that I didn't continue my stand-up. He used to always say, "Man, hey, you funny, man. You should do your." And I didn't want to. I didn't like clubs. Those 6 years with Tom getting beat up and spit on and poisoned. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't care where it is, Vegas or anywhere. I don't want to do this. Tom has a wonderful career as a stand-up. I don't. Um, and so one day I had performed and he was in the audience and I came off and he said, "Come in, man." And we sat down. He said, "You got that thing." I said, "What thing?" He said, "You're gonna be all right." I said, "Richard, what are you talking about?" He said, "You're gonna be all right. You got that thing." I said, "Richard, what thing?" He says, "I don't know what it is, fool. I just know it when I see it." Well, that is the truth of show business in a way. Not everybody is, I mean, you can be successful, make money, and have a good career, but you got to have an impact on the industry, to have an impact on people. There's got to be something within you that I can't define, Richard can't define, but we know it when we see it. It could be in a
Yeah,
boxer, it could be in any. You got to have that thing.
that
And I don't
it
know if
factor.
that thing, it's just
Yeah,
a thing. I mean, black, white, whether you're man, woman, if you don't have that thing, it 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 doesn't shorten your career. It just changes the way people respond to you. Um, that to me, I think, is what Richard. He certainly had it from the first time I laid eyes on Richard. For there are days, even today, there's a line that I'll pull from Richard. A matter of fact, I'm using it now. I'm very because I'm street. I get pissed off when I see AI tell our story. AI has taken over Black history, and they're
yeah,
doing it in their own image
yeah,
without context. And
yeah,
every time I see a piece with these beautiful, beautiful made up pictures of what people look like, and I get really frustrated. So I was looking at a piece the other day. The information is true was good, but they don't even use Black voices. They use like a made up Edinburgh voice, and they're telling our story. But they never put context to it. They just tells you they were talking about King Leopold and all this bullshit. And he killed 18, he did kill 18 million people, cut off the hands of another 6 or 7 million. But they don't tell you the context, how evil it was. They don't tell you how it supported Belgium, how the empires were built off of these people. And it really frustrated me. So I said, you know what? They always tell, why these white boys, young white boys, now want to tell all the Black history story? There's some white Jessies. Why don't they go out there and find them white Jessies? And it hit me. That's Richard Pryor's routine from the Craps album. I don't know if
yeah.
you remember Craps. The
Yes,
policeman
absolutely.
walk in the store saying, "You got anybody
Absolutely.
seen Jesse?" He
Yes,
said, the guy said, "Jesse, why don't you go find some white Jessies? There's some white Jessies." Well,
yes,
that's the way I feel now about Black history being told by AI. Go tell your own story. I know y'all did something that you're proud of. Go tell that story. Leave our
yes.
stories alone. They belong to us. And
Hmm.
I want young Black creative people to be upset about it as I am. Take back your culture. Do not allow the system to keep telling your story without context, without the power and giving honor to the ancestors. If I was an ancestor, I would be spinning in my grave. I would be so angry. I would be throwing spells
Yeah.
on people.
Yeah. Cussing
You
up a
know,
storm.
I'd be throwing spells, man.
So interviewed Jesse Jackson. Probably that was it's at least been 10 years. And we had a good session. And I asked him at the end of the session, Jesse, what you want on your tombstone?
Mm.
And he said, he got up.
Yeah, that's just
So today is your birthday. You turned 81 today. We want you to have another 81
no, I don't want that many, but go ahead.
revolutions around
Give
the
me another
sun.
10, another 10.
Whenever that time comes, what would
Mm.
Tim Reid want on his grave, on his tombstone?
I just one word, dream chaser. That's what I am. I'm a dream chaser. And I hope to be dreaming when my last thought is dreaming of what the next thing is going to be, dreaming of where I'm going.
I cannot thank you enough for taking the time again
Yeah.
on your birthday to spend this time with us.
Thank you, man.
Thank you very much. And brother, I will be in touch with you.
I appreciate it, Rock. It's really glad, and keep enjoying yourself down there. I'm looking for a place to find that rest, but you sound like you found a good one.
We should talk. We should
Yes.
talk.
All right, Rock.
All right. Folks, that
Thank you.
wraps us for today. I hope you've enjoyed, appreciated, and been enlightened by Brother Tim Reid. I'm going to sign off and see you the next time. God bless you.
Thank you. Bye, Rock.